Hello, my name is Żaba, and I'm a developer at Team. We are a wholesaler of electrotechnical parts, actually the biggest one in Poland. And we are building a development team to develop our e-commerce platform based on Magento. And we are actually right now launching the new front end, which is a completely headless solution based on Vue. But the topic of this presentation is a bit different. I would like to talk about clean coding standards and some kind of confronting them or comparing them to everyday reality, what we can end up with, and what we can do about it to make our life easier and better in the future. But before we do that, let's think a bit about how we can distinguish a good code and clean code. What are the measurements we can take to do that? And the first one is from the Clean Code by Robert Martin book. There is actually a clean series from that author, Clean Code, Master of the Clean Code and Clean Architecture. If you are concerned about standards and clean coding, good practices, it's not connected to the actual language, programming language, it's more universal. I strongly recommend to look into those positions. This is kind of a joke, of course, but it actually talks about really serious thing, which is readability of your code. And readability, in my opinion, is very important because this chart is presenting proportions of coding activities, which are true for in my case. Maybe it's true in your case. Maybe it's a bit different, but I think you will agree that almost 75% of our time will be understanding code, reading code, your code or someone else's code, maybe your code from the past. 20% of your time could be modifying the code, changing it or factoring, and only 5% will be adding something new classes, new components. And if it's true, then it's really worth it to take effort into readability, to make your code easier to understand. Because we as programmers are kind of artists. The programming is an art. Because writing a program that computer will successfully run is not a big problem. The big problem is if you want to write a code that will be easy to understand by other human. So that's the first thing we can do with measuring our code. Is it easy to read? Is it easy to understand? Is it self-documenting, self-explaining? There are also other more concrete measurements, of course, standards. I will not dive into them. There are more, of course, like Yagni, Grass, whatever, but if you're not familiar, you should definitely look into them. Choose your own and pick these ones which are most important for you. And also, good code passes tests, which also means it has tests. It can be manual testing, but it also unit tests, regression, integration, end-to-end, and so on. And there's a very important thing that your tests also needs to meet a standard and also should be easy to read and understand. Even more, that is even more important that you understand the test, so you understand the business logic which is behind it. And also there's one important thing, which is a code review. It's designed to be a check, like control, during the process of coding. So someone else review your code and take those measurements into concern and check if it's easy to read and understand, if it meets the standards, if it passes the tests. Those actually can be automated, of course. But we all know those kind of stuff are important, but also expensive. Writing tests requires time, which requires resources. So is it really important to do that effort and take care and take quality into concern? I will use two case studies. One will be not mine, the other will be mine. The first one is also from Robert Martin from Clean Architecture. Robert was asked to review a project, a big project. We can see how the stuff changes during the major releases. It was very big at the end. But is it disturbing? Is it everything worried there? I think it could be good. The project was evolving, the project was growing, everything's going fine, but is it really? Robert counted the lines of code in thousands during those releases, and we see that the first part was actually good. The project was evolving, was growing, but the second part was not that good. There were still demands from the business to do new things, but the team didn't manage to do that. And we can see from these two charts that managers increased the development team because the demands weren't released. So what they do, they increase, but it doesn't give the effort they wanted. Then let's merge those two charts into one chart, which is a cost per line. And we see that in the 8th release, it came up with a ridiculous number. It's more than $350 per line. I think it's huge. We have also the opposite chart, like the productivity, almost zero, and the monthly payroll, which is most disturbing for managers. And Robert reviewed the process of that project, and he saw that there were no standards, there were no tests. The only thing that managers do is increasing the size of the team. It didn't change and refactor how the team is working. So in that case, the standards, the routines were bad, and that's how it ends. I done kind of similar thing. I took 3 projects that I was involved or I had access to the repository, and I know about how the projects goes. Those are 1 year period, 1 month. For 1 month, I have a bit more data here. I will explain it why later. All of that projects were actively developed, now in the maintenance mode. All of that projects had constant team, so the team didn't change, maybe 1 person plus minus, but doesn't affect the effort. And what we can see that the first project was similar. The first part was good. The second part, something wrong happened there. Here is even more dramatic. The first half was enormous, like very good. The second part was even worse. And the third project, I took 1.5 years to prove that the trend is almost straightforward to the app. And only 2 of that project, only 1 project from those 3 has the standards from the beginning, has tests from the beginning, code review for all in the project. And guess which one? Of course, the third one. Of course, the third one. The first and 2, the only difference was lacking on standards, lacking on code review, lacking on tests. Of course, there could be more behind, but taking only this into account, that's the thing to think of, and maybe it's worth to take that effort. But how the reality looks, I think any of you who are a developer will have its own ideas or examples of the bad code you end up with or you found in your career. You can end up with something like that. It's hard to read. Everything is in Polish, even variables names, function names. There is a direct SQL call, complete mess, cannot work with that part. The other example, even worse. It's a Magento controllers, only 1 function, having more than 500 lines of code, has direct SQL calls, calls to separate web service during the flow, and also it renders HTML directly. It's not using blocks or templates at all. Complete mess, and imagine you need to do something with it, refactor or fix it, something. It's not that easy, and it's paining. So let's think a bit how it happens, why we end up with such a code. And so I think there could be multiple reasons, of course. But I think the major source of it is a kind of battle we are on, which is developers versus managers. And the deadlines are involved in here. I will give you a second to read this. It's not a funny joke, but it actually fits the context. Okay? So let's talk a bit about this battle, and let's talk about what both sides want. So of course, let's start with developers. Developers want a perfect code to work with. That's obvious. No one wants to work with mess. Of course, also developers want more time to develop new features, so they were not stressed by deadlines. And we want to have time to refactor if something's changed. The opposite, managers want new features to be implemented, of course. If there are bugs, they should vanish as soon as possible, of course. All of that should be done ASAP. And if it looks like this, it can end up in a dead circle. I call it like that. Oh, there's no animation. Never mind. It starts with a short deadline. And it's normal. I mean, we should not fight with this because that's the real life. We will have short deadlines. But the first mistake, which is happening here, we made an assumption, okay, so we have short deadlines, so we don't have time for tests, standards, and we don't take care of it because we need to go. And that directly leads to low quality code, which we know because we don't have standards, we don't have tests. And low quality code provides to bugs, which are not fixed, so deadline is probably not met, so the deadline is even shorter, and so on and so on. And what we can do, and I think is the best solution for that, is to find a kind of a common language between developers and managers, some kind of balance. Okay, so we both are listening to each other. Of course, we have goals. Of course, we have deadlines, which needs to be met. But also, we should be concerned about standards. We should be concerned about quality. And if we don't have time to refactor right now, let's do it in 1 week, or let's just schedule it. And we, as developers, need to stand for it. Needs to be reminders for managers to do that, because there's an animation. Great. Because our code is never finished. We are authors. We know that. We are authors. But we are different authors. For example, if a musician records a song, release it, it's done. It's released. Everything's perfect. But if we release a site, we will do another release. We will fix something. We will add something new. So our code is never finished. Okay? When we know that our cars are safe, let's move on. So, like I said, we never finished our masterpiece, and so we should be concerned about it. Okay, and Robert Martin said it's like a Boy Scout rule of leave your word behind a bit better than it was. It's also like a TDD statement, learn what works, then make a better solution. So always refactor. Okay, let's summarize it a bit. What we can do to assure equality in our projects. First of all, let's have our standards. It also stands for legacy code. We, for example, took the project from someone else, and we see that there were no standards at all. What we can do? First of all, we need to make some standards. We need to describe them and pick for our needs. Then we make an assumption that, okay, from now on, we will meet them, we will use them, and we will step by step clean up the code we have, because we will refactor anyway. The other tip will be to find a common language with managers and listen to each other to do that, to have a... okay, I forgot to mention about that previously, because I described a kind of battle. I think we should change that into a team, because we are a team. And so we have a common goal. We want a product. We want a perfect product we want to work with. A product which is making money, and product which is easy to work with and change, is flexible, etc. So that goal should join us, not divide us. So that's why here is a stand for common language with managers and developers. Then we as the developers, it's our responsibility to stand for equality. We should do that because it's for our own sake and for the sake of the project itself. It's important, I think. And refactor, and refactor. I will give you a comparison. Let's imagine that beautiful Audi e-tron is parked on the pavement on the road for 2 weeks. It's beautiful, it's shining, everyone is watching him. And also every user of that car is very careful with it, to not scratch it, to not break it, because everyone will see that scratch. Now let's imagine that someone was drunk, for example, or by an accident, break the window of that car. So it's broken, and another user will not take that much care of that car. Who cares if there is 1 broke window or 2 broke windows? Maybe any scratches will come up, etc., etc. After 1 week, it will be completely ruined because it wasn't fixed. So when we see a bad code, we feel okay with writing another bad code, because who cares? There are no standards in the project. We should not do that. Let's replace that window with a new one, brand new, and everyone will still be patient and careful with our product, our code. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. That presentation was more like an entry point for a discussion, for sharing opinions, and we have some time still. So if you are wanted to talk about or ask about something, please. Okay. So I will give you a few more minutes of break. Thank you very much for your attention.